Many of you may have heard this morning that Don Munson, the 10th most powerful person in our community, would really rather be the Yankee shortstop. According to Barnhart, he was well advised to go into broadcasting. This is a time to review. And as I look back on our season this year, it was one filled with accomplishments. We have an awful lot to be proud of here at Illinois State University, and this team is one of our pride and joys, that's for sure. As I review the year and think of what we accomplished this year with this basketball team, please review with me just for a moment or two. Think about the rushing game that we played down in Springfield, the first time that an Illinois State University athletic team took our product to Springfield against probably the number 2 international team in the world. Think about the game against Purdue, the first time a Big Ten university visited Horton Fieldhouse. Think about the great wins that we had against 4 NCAA-bound tournament teams: Bradley, Wichita State, Iowa, and Boston University. We played 11 games against NCAA-bound teams. We played 7 games against top 20 teams, top 20 rated teams in America. And we came out of that with an 18-13 record. At the beginning of the season, Bob said over and over, as our seniors go, so shall we go. This senior group was confronted with more adversity than any group that I have ever witnessed. Matt's ankle, Cliff's ankle, Tony's knee, and Jeff's everything. And yet they persevered. I never heard one time when they used their injuries as an excuse. Many times I went to practice and wondered why they were practicing. They were anxious to get back on the floor. But then all I had to do was look at Bob and I realized why they were practicing. He had the whip over there. It was a year of accomplishments.
I ain't gonna say nothing about you yet, Stokes. I'm gonna wait a second too. But anyway, I would like to thank, on my part, and as far as all the other seniors' part, I would like to thank Coach D, for giving me and the rest of my fellow senior mates opportunity to play, and thank him for being supportive and really just waiting for us to come around. And then I would also like to thank his family, Mrs. D, for all the wonderful cookings that she gave us and really making us feel at home. And I would like to thank, his coaching staff, Coach Zeiker, Coach Zort, and my main man, the man that really helped me push through this, Coach Jones. And I would also like to thank Mr. Wellman here, who did a terrific job for this being his first year and everything. No, seriously though, he did a real terrific job. And I would like to thank, Mr. Watkins, for a terrific job he done. And I would also like to thank, the social work department, for helping me out, even though I missed a lot of class for games and everything, but them being real supportive of me. And, I know it's going to be somebody I'm missing. I know as soon as I sit down, I'm going to start thinking of people that I should have said. But, and I would also like to thank the community, for a terrific time. And if I could do it again, I wouldn't mind doing it again. And I don't want to end this, I don't want to end my speech real plain. Like the other seniors, they ended it. They was like, okay, it's over, thank you. But I want to end my speech, but I want all you guys to remember me as peace.
Cliff told me one time, you know, Jeff, this is after he shot the air ball. He goes, I used to laugh at people who shot air balls from the free throw line. Tony, a one-year roommate of Matt and mine. I don't want to mention the free throw line again. A unique player who sometimes has a little bit of bark in him. Coach is known for taking a so-called mediocre player. Now that made me feel good coming out of high school. Yeah, mediocre player. Boy. But to make them in to the best possible basketball player he could be. And that's what I wanted to be coming out of high school. I wanted to be the best player I could be. And I thought Coach Donewald represented the things that could make me be that. And I got a good example here for you. Now see, my freshman year, Coach Donewald made the statement, Harris, you can't guard a wall. Cliff told me one time, you know, Jeff, this is after he shot the air ball. He goes, I used to laugh at people who shot air balls from the free throw line. Tony, a one-year roommate of Matt and mine. I don't want to mention the free throw line again. A unique player who sometimes has a little bit of bark in him. Coach is known for taking a so-called mediocre player. Now that made me feel good coming out of high school. Yeah, mediocre player. Boy. But to make them in to the best possible basketball player he could be. And that's what I wanted to be coming out of high school. I wanted to be the best player I could be. And I thought Coach Donewald represented the things that could make me be that. To sum it, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the memory you gave me tonight. Thank you for your confidence. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your direction giving. Thank you for your support. Thank you for making me the best basketball player I could be. Thank you.
You know, one of the most interesting and enjoyable parts of coaching is the opportunity to be involved in young people's lives and watch them grow, and to be there and give them direction. Yeah, I really think that's important, and it's needless to say very worthwhile. Who would have thought 4 years ago that Peterson could have gotten up there as if he was running a campaign speech? I can remember the first time he was in town too, Cliff, and I can remember your first day of employment, which was the last day on that job. But you know, like, Cliff, isn't that right? But you know, they're not quite grown up yet, and you know, you always feel that they can go a little bit further and that you've got to continue to give them some direction. And tonight, I think, is a perfect example. Cliff, you see that microphone down there? We put that one up so that the players wouldn't have to come up, but they would have to go. Now, those of you who aren't around black kids like I am, you may not think he's embarrassed and blushing, but I'm going to flat guarantee you he is. Before I go any further, I want to recognize one of our favorite people, and I mean our, and when I talk about Illinois State University and the contribution that they made while Dr. Bone and his wife led this great institution, and I know they're here and they've been fans for a long, long time, and and I know they will continue to be so in the future. Doc Bone and Mrs. Bone, how about standing up and being recognized? We've done some things differently, as I'm sure you're well aware of, in not only in bringing it back here where we started, but in getting the serving lines open early. The camera in the back of the room is a television camera, and I understand that Telecable is taping this particular event and will air it at some future time. The date exactly or time I really don't know when that will be, but if you'll contact Telecable in a few days, Al Shepston, who is running the doggone thing, will, I'm sure, provide us with that information. In addition to that, the president is absolutely accurate. I can remember our first banquet. Where's Warren Cruz? Is Warren here? Warren was the one who masterminded and organized our first banquet here some 10 years ago, Warren, and the size has greatly increased, as the president alluded to, and it is encouraging to be able to come to an event like this and have so many people here, and in a further attempt to streamline our banquet because of the time and wanting to really the spotlight to be on the kids. A year ago, there are so many people that help you in a basketball program, and to go through that and the fear that you'll leave somebody out in an attempt to try and streamline that entire process, we put on the back of the program some of the key people, and I hope that you'll take the time to read that, because and although I was going to have Ron say that, but then I noticed that Ron's name was on there and I had put him on there, so I couldn't ask him to do it. But there are people both from his perspective as well as my perspective that really are significant in putting on a college basketball program today. And some of those people and their staffs are listed there. And so really on behalf of Ron and myself, we greatly appreciate the people that, and they are too numerous to mention, that have made a significant contribution and have greatly helped our basketball program. Those who work for me or with me very, very closely on a day-to-day basis, I'd really like for them to stand at this time, and I'll start with our student managers, John Impen and Brian Bernick and Mike Bender and Joe Brennan. Would you guys please stand? Please recognize them. Mama, stand up. Now turn around. No, turn around. Now Mama shows up at the games and I see the banquet. And I notice that he isn't quite dressed like the other guys. And Mama, I don't know how you got off work tonight to sneak in and get a free meal. But I'm going to talk to the people at the door and find out exactly how you did that, because evidently you're in cahoots with my son, Bob. Bob, would you stand up for a second? There's something I have to say to you, too. There was a reference made earlier, son, about academics in the Army and be all you can be. I hope you got the message now that you're a senior in high school. You two guys can sit down. John and Brian really organized the thing, and seriously, you guys have done a heck of a job for us, and I greatly appreciate it. Somebody who's been with me now, gosh, I don't know how long, it's 5 or 6 years. My secretary, Tammy Pence, and her husband, Bill, are here. Would you please stand and be recognized? I think it was only appropriate that if so many injuries were going to transpire to this basketball team, that sooner or later our athletic trainer cop out and come up with his own injury. So I think that, Doc, it was rather interesting. It was after a loss and not after a victory. but I do greatly appreciate what you have done over the years, and your able assistant who fills in for you from time to time during the course of the year. You two men give a tremendous amount of your time and energy and effort, and there's more to being an athletic trainer in our day and age than just taping a few ankles or checking on an injury. And you men have gone far beyond, and I greatly appreciate your efforts. Would you please to stand and be recognized again? The people on a day-to-day basis, who Don has already mentioned, have and work with me the closest. I think there are a lot of things that you have to have in order to have an excellent basketball program, and people who are willing to pay a tremendous price, and yet not receive as much of the accolades, and yet need to be people. And and I don't know whether you picked this up or not, but Cliff made reference to AJ, and that goes much deeper than just on a basketball floor. And if you watch the interaction between the men and the players during the course of 4 years, and the direction and guidance, the off-the-floor assistance as well as on-the-floor assistance, there are so many things that, and I think without question, that's exactly what Cliff was referring to in each of them, and has made a significant contribution, and I would like to recognize them at this particular time. AJ, Mark, and Bill, and the two wives, Sandy and Sue, would you please all stand up? Bill, will you and Sandy please stand up for just a second? I don't know why you're snickering. There are always those who are somewhat aware that we play or spend a considerable amount of time during the course of any particular year in trying to prepare for a basketball team or a game or a season. But one of the questions that I'm always asked is, what do you do in your spare time? Congratulations, Bill and Sandy. You may sit down. I think they had a feel that it was coming, huh? "10 years, 4 children." I hope that's not one of my kids raising all that noise. I said this to Dick. I think it was Dick on one of those shows right at the end of the season when we were saying what is 10 years in Horton Fieldhouse meant, and I said something to the effect that it wasn't the building. Building is neither here nor there with me, but it was the people's lives that I've had the privilege to be involved with, particularly the players. And then I said my 4 children have watched their dad's teams play in this building, and my wife Kathy has sat in the same seat for the same 10 years now. My wife reminded me that isn't true. Before the chairback, she was over on the other side in the upper double J, I believe it was. But the thought was what counted, I think, in the doggone thing. It was more difficult, I think, in those days for people to walk by who weren't as happy with her husband's team as they would to pound her on the back, or to give her a disgusting look, or to say some snide remark as if somehow she was directly or indirectly responsible for our disappointing show in the first half, or the inept play, or the lack of an effective zone defense, or whatever the particular comment might have been. But through it all, and again, Cliff made reference to this, she has continued to stand with me and support me and be really a mother away from home for many of these kids. I've seen her sit in the living room and discuss problems with kids that as they had problems and needed to relate to somebody who was kind of like a mom to them. Some of them, needless to say, have been closer than others. But through it all, I said this to her one time, and this may be difficult for maybe you young guys to understand. I think the older men will. It really wouldn't mean the same. And I'm not sure I'd want to be a part of it if she wasn't there to be a part of it with me. And so once a year I say thank you, and like most men, I'm not very good at it, but I want you to know, baby, I love you, and I thank what you have done. Now, I have pointed out to Don Munson from time to time when I thought he was in error. This evening happens to be one of those occasions. Don, you made reference that the food was not catered in from Tulsa. You were only partially right. This part of the table, you are accurate. This part of the table, except the far end, I don't give a damned about. And as a result of that, we got a cheap deal. You know, Zyker's always trying to wheel and deal. So the good news for you folks out there is, welcome to Tulsa. The bad news is, as we found out while we were in Tulsa, there isn't enough plumbing to meet all of your needs. After the ball game, I walked up to the Russian coach, and he said to me, you know, if you had a couple of really tall players, he said, I think you could play with anybody in the country. But he said, regardless of that, you have a very good basketball team that I think will have a lot of success this year. A very smart team that plays very well together. There are always moments that you reflect back upon a particular basketball season, and some things stand out, I think, more than others. Some of it has been alluded to already by some of the previous speakers in not getting down, not feeling sorry for themselves. Regardless of what the situation was, we found people to contribute and to go on. And that is all very true and very accurate. Each youngster, except for the 3 redshirts, played a significant role. We changed starting lineups more often than any time in my entire coaching career. Some as a result of particular assignments in a ball game, but most often as a result of some of the precarious and crazy things that we found, or precarious situations we found ourselves in, as well as some of the crazy things that happened to us. I remember during that particular Tulsa game and sitting on the bench in 40 Anderson, the former great Michigan State coach. Noticed I didn't make reference to where he was before that. He said to me, you know, if you're in this game long enough, Bob, he said, you're going to have just about everything happen to you. And the only thing that you can hope for is that it doesn't happen again. Now, I look at 4 seniors, and they've been addressed before, but I think it's important that as we look at these 4 kids that we look not only... you know what I did last night, fellas? I went back and I reviewed your press comments from the time that you came to Illinois State. It was interesting. Hollifield thought he would play out on the perimeter. Harris talked about his ball handling skills. Taphorn talked about running an offense when we couldn't even get him through a walkthrough without spraining an ankle. And Cliff talked about everything. I said this to these kids the other day. I said, I have greatly enjoyed my association with each of you. And like all the youngsters that have gone on before you, I look back upon each young man with specific memories. Not necessarily great moments, some yes, some no, some disappointment, some despair. but just more of a maturing factor as I've watched him go from high school kids to college athletes to young men, and now on the verge of graduation and going on into their chosen fields of endeavor. Tony, stand up for just a second. The first summer, I can recall making the home visit with you. Your ties with Decatur, your moments in that first season. Remember the great Wichita overtime win here, and the catalyst behind that great win was Tony. We've made jokes about the frustrations of missing the free throws, but I want you to know now that it's all over, I empathized with you a lot. Because I really felt that there are a lot of times in life when it's going to be, or when it is frustrating and embarrassing, and things that you're trying to do right won't necessarily go well for you. And I always watch from a distance to see how you would emotionally handle it, because I think you learn a lot about a young man in those situations. Oftentimes more so in defeat than in victory. I have marveled at your unique and uncanny ability to get the ball in the basket close and when against bigger, stronger, and quicker youngsters. I've marveled at the slowness with which you've gotten down the floor on defense. I've marveled at the softness with which you talk when you address people in a one-on-one situation. But most of all, I have appreciated the way that you have grown as an individual. A willingness to accept responsibility for your own behavior, recognizing when you were doing well, and willing to recognize when you weren't doing so well. I think you played the best basketball that I've ever seen you play in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament your senior year, and I think without question you were the catalyst of everybody in getting us through and into the championship game. We'll miss you, Tony. We'll look forward to having you come back, as I said before. We'll reminisce on some of those great slam dunks that you made and the quickness with which you got to the bucket. But we'll miss you as a person, and we wish you well. Ladies and gentlemen, for the last time, please recognize Tony Hollifield. I remember the first three-point shot Harris took. It was so slow, the shot clock went off. And he got the ball with 40 seconds to go on the clock. That's not totally true. We didn't have the clock in at that time. It was a ball game in which Brad Duncan had all of a sudden, I'm up sick. I don't remember really what Brad's problem was. We were playing Tulsa and we needed a shooter. And we were down to Harris or nobody. And I remember that first shot he took. I wasn't sure that he was ever going to get it off. And I remember him, and I should have known then what was in store. I remembered him bringing the ball back across the timeline against one of Nolan's presses and tripping and falling and the ball going out of bounds. And I should have known then I was going to experience the best and the worst of both worlds. I think, Jeff, more than anything else, you have established, you have paved the way for all of those kids that will shoot the three-point shot in the future at Illinois State, as long as I'm here. And I say that because, and I've often said this, that if Duncan were back here today, he would really be envious and jealous of what we have allowed Jeff to do. But I don't think he would be envious and jealous of all the pressures, of all the concentration, of all the physical abuse that Jeff has had to take as a result of that freedom. Yet I know that to a certain extent, did you get that, Scarage? To a certain extent, my coaching philosophy has changed. Who will ever forget the Iowa State game? And those of you who weren't there got to listen to the play-by-play of Mark Zwart. Shortly after that, Zwart became a coach. Because like most people who get on that silly tube, they try to do a lot of coaching, and unlike Billy Packer, he finally decided to try it. Now he's going back into television next year. It was a great moment for you, Jeff. It was a great moment for Illinois State University. It was the first time in the history of modern-day athletics we had beat a Big 8 school. And I think they had I don't know, their record was 20 or 30 some in a row. I really don't recall. That's neither here nor there. And although Cliff alluded to it too, some of the frustrations and the disappointments of your sophomore year as you acclimated to a new role and adjusted to the pressures and demands. And it only was intensified at the beginning of this year as Sam went down and Matt went down and put you in an extremely precarious position, in that you were really the only key perimeter shooter that we had, and had to carry the bulk of it until at least Matt got healthy. The toughness with which you've approached that, in addition to maintaining your academic excellence, I think has been well recognized. What has amazed me, Jeff, has been your ability to leave it on the floor and go elsewhere and continue to seek after excellence. I told Jeff after the Russian game, in which we honored him for receiving his Academic All-American Award, I said, Jeff, you're only the second young man in the 15 years that I've been in college coaching to have received an Academic All-American Award. I found it interesting when we were over in Peoria, Jeff, and I didn't say anything to you at the time, is that we were at the luncheon the day before the game, and on the right was the Bradley athletes. And you had Hawkins, who was an All-American, and justifiably so. And we were sitting there as with an academic All-American in our party. And the emphasis and the jubilation was on the athlete and not on the student. Not that one should have been slighted, or that the athlete should have been slighted, but I felt you were slighted. But instead of protesting, I felt I would pick my spot, and it would be tonight to tell you that given the two, I'll take the academic All-American over the athlete for one particular reason. You have made an incredible contribution to your family and to this institution. You have brought recognition, and you stand for what intercollegiate athletics is all about. That's not to take away from the athlete. But I think that if more people were to recognize what it takes in order to do both, to be a significant contributor in a major college basketball program, and yet go outside, and then to be involved in a program as intense as your program is, your curriculum is, and to maintain that great level of excellence, there are few who can do it. Very few. I've coached a lot of All-Americans, Jeff. You're only one of two that's ever been at that level. What will I remember most about you? Your willingness to sacrifice at both ends. Your willingness to drive and push yourself. And believe me, I know how hard you've worked to become a good basketball player. But your willingness to go the extra mile and to prepare yourself for long after you can't shoot the ball and your legs are too slow to run up and down the floor. We'll look forward to following you in the future, Jeff. And the only thing that I can say is, if you ever operate on one of those Bradley suckers, bust his leg. Stand up, Jeff. Stand up. Stand up. Last fall, some of you had the privilege and the honor of being there when he was recognized as an academic All-American down in Springfield. Unfortunately, I was called away and had to go into the locker room and discuss with your teammates, Jeff, what it was we felt you should be doing on the floor. And I missed that unique moment. There was something else that I thought I regretted, and that I was unable to get done in that particular evening. And that was to involve your mom and dad in a little bit more of that unique and special moment. I think Ron Harris and Mrs. Harris are here tonight. Is that accurate? Ron, would you please come up here and give your son the award for an academic All-American 1987 and 88. Will you please come up here? Bonnie, would you please come with him? Ron is the director of athletics at Lawrence North High School, and he's used to banquets.
Right.
It's all yours.
Well, this is a very special moment for my wife and I. And I know that it was Jeff's dream to play Division I basketball all through high school. And I remember when we were in Florida on spring break and that opportunity to visit Illinois State and to accept his scholarship when we come back. That was one of the highlights of Jeff's career right there. He's had his ups and downs, and we've had our telephone calls all 4 years. But I would like to say, and we've had some incidents in our life that's been very touching. And Jeff's just a super young man. He was through high school, and I couldn't be more proud of him now, and I'm sure his mother is too. So congratulations, Jeff, on this award.
When I went over to see Taphorn play as a senior in high school, it was in a scrimmage situation. One of my assistants had been telling me, you need to go see this kid. I think he can contribute. Well, as so often happens, I felt the day that he went over there, he wasn't very good. But I recall, that hadn't happened since, Matt, I want you to know that. But I recall an incident which sold me on him. There was a little guy, probably about my size, maybe a little shorter, that was, knew that I was there, and he's trying to really pressure Matt. Matt's bringing the ball across the timeline, and he stole it from Matt right at the 10-second line. It was a great steal for a little kid that probably quit playing basketball after that year, probably got cut. It was stiff, in our phraseology or terminology. And he started to go down the other end, and he didn't get 2 steps, and Taphorn reached out and grabbed that kid and threw him to the floor. Took the basketball without changing expressions, except to clench his teeth, and just went on as if nothing ever happened. Now that's a true story. And right then and there, I decided that Matt Taphorn had what it took to be a major college basketball player. To show you how far he has come relative to being able to handle situations out on the floor. He even learned how to clench his fist and stick it up in the air in Peoria's Civic Center as he ran down the floor. This past summer, actually, in about August, I was talking to his high school coach. And his high school coach said to me, I've never known this young man, Matt, referring to Matt, to spend the amount of time that he has during the course of this past summer in preparation for the upcoming season. And he said, I think he will have a very, very good year. I remember Bob Keefe coming to me during the course of Matt's freshman year and said, you know, I know you're always looking for leaders, and I think a young man that could conceivably fill that role when he gets a little bit older will be Matt. I can remember the time that I decided to start Matt after the St. Louis game his junior year. And so we had this little walkthrough. And we're in street shoes, and I'm just saying now, Matt, the man you will be guarding will walk over here, and you need to, you know, we walked with him, and so he sprains an ankle and has to miss the game. What I'll miss most, though, Matt, are those communications on the bench. Hopefully we'll find players who will be able to hit the last second shots. Hopefully we'll find players that will be able to recognize where their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. But very few will ever be able to do what you did on a bench as a player. Few have that gift. But most importantly, I think we've enjoyed watching you grow as an individual and as a basketball player, have suffered through your injuries with you, have agonized over it. We wish you the best. And my suggestion to you is, as a CPA over in Peoria, wear your red and white with pride, and let them know that you're always a part of us, because you really are. Will you recognize Matt Tappan? I remember going over to Bradley this year for the tournament, and then after we won the first game, I remember walking off the floor, and they said, and then were four. And then after we walked off the floor after we had beaten Wichita, the comment was, and then there are two. Well, now there's just one. Where did you get that sports coat? I know this, you didn't come with that thing. Some of the most meaningful moments to me I really can't tell you about with Cliff. But if anybody or any one young man clearly expresses what it's all about, I think it's Cliff. You know, I've asked Cliff, I said, Cliff, what do you want to do when you want to graduate? I said, there'll be opportunities for you. And he said, you know, Coach, he said, I want to go back to Detroit, and I want to help kids. He said, I think I've now got something I can offer them. And I think I can have an impact on some of their lives. I really was kind of trying to discourage him at first. I said, you know, Cliff, Detroit isn't, you know, one of the 10 best places in the country to live. I mean, it would be really closer to the armpit of the world. But values change in young people. And he knows what's there. He grew up on those streets. And he says, Coach, if there is a situation where I just don't feel I would turn it down or couldn't turn it down, yeah, that's probably true. I would do that. But he said, more than anything else, I want to go back. My mom's alone raising my sisters, and they need a man in the house. His dad died shortly before he came to Illinois State University. And he said, they need a man. And I got to go back and I got to help raise those kids. My mom needs help. And I got to go back and make an impact in the lives of a lot of guys that were just like me at one time. And I think I can do that. Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what it's really all about. The great moments. You know, I told Cliff I thought he was on his way to an incredible season until the injury in the Wichita ball game. And I agonized with him as the frustrations continued to mount, where he was just ready to pull his hair out. And yet he stayed with it and drove himself. And once he adjusted to what he couldn't do, he continued to help us. Who knows what could have been if it had not happened? Who knows? But you know what? In the final analysis, that really isn't very important. What's really important is what he's going to do from here. In the fact that he recognizes that he grew as an individual human being during the course of his 4 years at Illinois State, and he's grown as a person and now feels he has something to give back to other people. They're going to recognize one of the outstanding defensive man in the country, or maybe they already have, I don't know. I remember sitting and talking to the Duke staff, and one of their players at the NCAA tournament, one of their players is up for the award, and the comment made to me by the staff was, well, you know, he really is a very good defensive player, but he doesn't do it all the time. And I reflected back upon what Stevie Alford said to me after the Indiana game a year ago. He said, he's the best that's ever played against me. I can remember what Southwest Missouri State said after we played them here a year ago, and Charlie Spooner, the coach, came up and said, nobody's ever guarded him like Peterson did. And I can recall so many great times that game in and game out, prior to the injury, he handled it all. And then he wasn't quite the same player, but he was the same young man. Cliff, I don't have any games scheduled in Detroit right now. And the chances are we probably won't be going up there in the near future. But we're going to count on you coming back. We're going to count on you keeping us abreast. We count on you taking us with you. And with God's help, you'll make that impact on those lives, not just of your sisters, but to the other young people that you will be involved with. And we'll miss you. I won't miss some of your shots, I'll tell you that right now. But I'll miss not being able to go down to that bench or go into the game knowing that I've got 7 or 8 or 9 rebounds from a kid who really isn't a great jumper. That if there's somebody to guard and he's healthy and he isn't in foul trouble, he could do it. And probably the most touching moment, Cliff, was really after the last loss at Cleveland State. The kid's season, the kid's career is all over. And he came over and we had a special moment, he and I. That's what's meaningful about this business. Cliff, we're going to miss you. We wish you the very, very best. Ladies and gentlemen, please recognize one of the very best.